Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, well, he now plans to come here to Detroit.
Yeah, support for the UAW strikes is at 75% with 25% in opposition. It's very, very stupid to not be in support of it. I mean, just look at Donald Trump, man. He knows how to read the room. That's why he didn't immediately on the UAW in the press junket that he did. And now, instead of going on to the debate, Trump is actually going to go to the picket line.
And make a speech to about 500 auto workers and other supporters trying to make his case to striking workers. George?
Okay, Terry.
Dude, if Brandon actually, as a sitting president, went to the picket line and showed support to union workers, this would be a historic moment in American history. You're saying he won't? Who knows? I mean, maybe Trump going there could change the dynamic a little bit. It wouldn't be as easy of a dub as you think it is. Has there ever been a sitting president that's ever gone to a picket line and actively supported striking workers? I love people saying Bernie already went. No, I said sitting president. I highly doubt Trump is going to actually speak to union workers. Too risky, they will boo him. No, I'm sure there's UAW people, UAW rank and file that's pro-Trump. And if he doesn't actually talk to UAW rank and file, then that will look really bad in the media. They'll cook his ass. They'll be like, oh, Trump was too scared to talk to actual picketing workers, so he hired his own people. And I'm sure there are still plenty of people who like Trump in the UAW. I mean, come on, we talked about this already. Unions are not about left and right. Unions are not about Democrat, Republican. Unions are about what's fair. Unions are about clawing back some of that juicy profits that you have generated for the shareholders that never see the assembly line. That's what unions are about. It's what's just. It's what's fair. I'm sure there are tons of, Trumpers and trumpets in the UAW anyway. Not that it fucking matters. So this was actually a really cool story. This is from Daniel Boguslaw at The Intercept on the UAW seriously outsmarting the automakers. We briefly talked about this a little bit. CNBC reported, citing a source familiar with the UAW strategy, a list of plants that they said the UAW planned to strike at. The big three moved a bunch of engines around and shut down various plants to anticipate it. They were wrong on every count and, at great expense, moved engines from plants that didn't strike to plants that did strike. Total fail by the executives, which allowed the UAW to paralyze their operations while still sending most of their members to work, conserving the strike fund. This is the reason why Shawn Fain decided to do a standing strike. Instead of calling a full-blown strike for 145,000 rank-and-file UAW members, he chose specific plants while also feeding to certain operations which plants he was going to strike at and keeping the actual strikes, actual plants that they were striking at close to heart, close to the chest. This way, you literally maximize the hurt. You end up having a larger impact with less money that you're spending out of the strike funds, allowing for these strikes to continue. Jimmy Carter, in the late 70s, Carter faced a coal miner strike. While he didn't visit the strike personally, he invoked the Taft-Hartley Act to try and end the strike, showing direct presidential involvement. No, I'm talking about showing solidarity to the striking workers. I didn't mean which American president has squashed strikes. Plenty have. That's not all of them, including Joe Biden, has done that as well. Why not stay on the clock but intentionally fuck off and work slow instead of striking? Damn, bro. 3 beasts came up with the fucking blue flu, okay? Plenty of workforces that are not legally allowed to strike due to their importance will oftentimes do that anyway. Cops do it. Cops literally have already been doing it even before they tried striking, or even before they do the blue flu. Cops have been doing the blue flu by just being fucking incompetent. But even then, it doesn't matter. This is a better idea overall than just slowing down the process. CNBC was cribbing from a trade publication which probably got their information from some strike-breaking consultant who was clearly played a fool by the UAW. It's great. How are unions not left-wing? I don't understand that. I mean, they are. Unions in general are a anti-capitalist measure. This does not mean that it's automatically socialist. It just simply goes against the better interest of capital owners. So technically they are leftist. But overall, there are plenty of union rank-and-file members who are right-wing. But their material interest lies in being a part of a union, because unions are the most successful way in contemporary society of clawing back the value that you generate for your bosses. And there are certain unions, like company unions, that aren't necessarily leftist. You have the police union, which is inherently a anti-worker group of individuals. So it's not a real union, but it's technically classified under the AFL-CIO. But yes, people don't need to identify as a leftist. They engage in left-wing organizing. They don't even know what they're doing is left-wing, and it's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. There has been a concerted effort in the last 80 years to squash class consciousness in unions, which has led to the rightward shift in union leadership, which is why you see rank and file voting against their class interests. The politics of unions and lack of class consciousness does matter and has a negative effect on solidarity in the working class. I think that the union leadership not necessarily representing the interests of the rank and file is a direct consequence of the neoliberalization of unions. One of the greatest examples of this was in recent history when the Nevada culinary and hospitality unions, the rank and file was overwhelmingly in support of Bernie Sanders, whereas the leadership in Nevada was anti-Bernie Sanders and wanted to go and actually lend support to some fucking neoliberal Democrat. Now, why did they do that? Well, the reason why they did that is because the union leadership in and of itself was directly interested in maintaining, in their assessment of the situation, they were directly interested in maintaining a awful private marketplace for healthcare because they saw the offerings of health insurance from the union as like a decent way to drive more members to join the union, which is a really fucking stupid and really, I mean, it's a really stupid and self-defeating argument to make. But some unions do that. Some unions are also very powerful, and they've maintained their powerful position, especially with like older unions with corrupt leadership, have maintained their positions by cozying up to the Democratic Party and regularly offering endorsements to the Democrats and not really expecting anything in return from them. Let's see what Bernard has to say about it.
Talks are back on this weekend between union leaders and the big three auto companies as the United Auto Workers Union.
I actually have a friend who doesn't like universal health care for that reason. Her dad has great insurance and feels like it's a union selling point. Yeah, that's actually so fucking stupid because, hey, guess what? If great healthcare is provided by the government, then the unions can now demand better benefits in other directions. You don't even have to bargain for fucking great healthcare because the government's taking care of it. So now, all of that fucking money that opened up that you are generating, okay, as a worker, that you are creating in the form of profits for the company, you can now demand back so that it directly goes into your fucking pocket. That's it. Imagine if all of your healthcare premiums that your company's paying for going directly into your fucking pocket, $200, $300 a month, all of a sudden added to your salary. It's beautiful, bold, it's brilliant, it's great. All of a sudden, strike funds don't need to be so costly. Union dues can go directly into strike funds, and you know, you have more leverage, you have more bargaining power. It's so stupid to think that government-provided healthcare would not lend a helping hand to the working class. And that is before we even obviously consider the elephant in the room, which is that this is good. This is good for every American citizen and certainly good for the American working class in general.
Considers whether to expand their strike beyond those three plants. Joining us now, independent senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, who rallied with workers on the picket line Friday. Senator Sanders, Vice President Pence was on the show earlier. He said, when I asked him about the fact that the CEOs make, multiples more than their average workers, 362 times more in the case of Ford, I said, do you think that's fair? He said, CEO pay is up to free enterprise. It's up to shareholders, not the government. What's your response?
No, I strongly disagree. I think what's going on in America today in terms of income and wealth inequality, the fact that CEOs are now making 400 times more than their average worker, the fact that we have three people on top who own more wealth than the bottom half of America, the fact that during the last 50 years, the weekly wages of the average American worker are lower today than they were back then, speaks to the anger that the American people are feeling and what this strike is about. The American people are sick and tired, in my view, Jake, and I've been all over this country. They are sick and tired of corporate greed, in which the very richest people are becoming richer. The head of General Motors now makes $29 million a year. And yet if you're a new worker in the big three, you make less than $17 an hour. They have temp workers who are temp year after year after year who make far lower wages than other workers. You have profits there, 21 billion in profits in the first half of this year. So what you're seeing in the automobile industry, in my view, is what we're seeing all over this economy. Greed on the top, suffering on the part of the working class, and people are tired of it.
I want to get to some of those bigger issues in a second, but first I want to ask you, this push from the UAW for a 4-day work week, is that a negotiating tactic, or do you see that as the future of labor in the U.S., a 4-day work week?
Well, I'll tell you what I think, and thanks for raising that question, Jake. We are looking at an explosion in this country of artificial intelligence and robotics. And that means that the average worker is going to be much more productive. Worker productivity is going to increase significantly. The question as a nation that we have got to ask ourselves is who's going to benefit from that increased productivity? Is all of that new income and wealth being created by worker productivity going to go to the people on top, or are workers going to benefit? So right now, in my view, I happen to believe that as a nation, we should begin a serious discussion, and the UAW is doing that, about substantially lowering the work week. People in America are stressed out for a dozen different reasons. And that's one of the reasons why life expectancy in our country is actually in decline. People are overwhelmed. They got to take care of their kids. They got to worry about healthcare. They got to worry about housing. They're worried. It seems to me that if new technology is going to make us a more productive society, the benefit should go to the workers. And it would be an extraordinary.
I don't know if there's another way to argue this. I've said this so many fucking times. As we become more productive, as our production capabilities get better and better through technological improvements, that shouldn't be used as a way to reduce the number of workers. It should be used in a way that is pro-worker, where the number of workers stay the same, but the hours that they work are lower and the pay goes higher. It makes no fucking sense. Give the same workforce less work. They can still do more work with the technological achievements. You don't have to fire them, but we don't see that. Our production efficiency is getting better, but aren't workers declining? Yes, because all matter of technological achievements that have improved our industrial capabilities, improved our productivity, has been used as a way to reduce the number of workers in a specific sector. It's not a coincidence that America's labor force has basically become the service sector. You have the white-collar office workers that are largely doing like bullshit jobs, made-up fucking jobs. There's bullshit, numbers crunchers, and the like. And they are getting hit with that same automation as well. Artificial intelligence, automation is like harming them as well, obviously. It's all, our blue-collar manufacturing industry has been shipped overseas because it's much cheaper. And the ones that remain here have been automated and reduced to a minuscule size, while the rest of the people that have been fired and their children are now fucking working in the service sector. And the service sector is also awful. Not a lot of protections there, not a lot of unionization there. There's nothing you can do about that part either. And overall, if you're either a part of, the highly paid tax bracket, or you're the rest of American society and you're just like desperate to make ends meet, it sucks. You have only two fucking options. And this, by the way, is no different in Turkey. This is what I like. This is what I grew up with in Turkey. This is what I have seen in my lifetime, and I watched America transition from a society that at least promoted having like this robust, massive middle class that could easily pay the $5 subscription at the top of the hour to avoid the 3-minute ad break, to let's watch GDF official.
What's up, guys? I'm making the 15-hour potatoes, but first.
By the way, I fucking love that. So hungry.
A word from our sponsor, the Democratic Party. Ever wonder why your wages are so shit? You can't afford a home and all the old factories in your town are abandoned? In 1980, the Democrat-controlled Congress passed the Monetary Control Act, which repealed interest rate limits. Banks were now allowed to raise interest rates as high as they wanted. Then Democrat Fed Chair Paul Volcker, appointed by Democrat Jimmy Carter, induced the worst recession since the Great Depression. The Fed kept interest rates high for the entire 1980s. This caused the dollar to skyrocket in value, making other countries country's labor cheaper. By the Federal Reserve's own admission, this policy decimated American manufacturing and farming forever. We are decimating our export industries because of the long-term effects of the strong dollar. Even Volcker admitted that the dollar was a big mistake. American corporations closed up shop and moved production overseas. The American economy turned service industry based, an industry without unions. Because of depressed wages, the percentage of families who owned their homes decreased for the first time since World War II. Overseas, the Depression caused a debt crisis, which ushered in the IMF's structural adjustment programs, implementing sweeping neoliberal reforms and Ponzi scheme-like debt burdens that have lasted to this day. See, Democrats didn't just destroy the American economy, they permanently altered the global financial system forever.
Yeah, it's fucked up that the potatoes never actually come back in that video. This is hilarious, pretending this was a phenomenon totally instituted by the Democrats and not unified partnership between the GOP and Democrats. I think GDF would recognize that it was absolutely just capitalism, which I know he knows is implemented, like interests of the capital owning class is implemented by both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party together. It's just that pointing the finger of blame at the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party has at the very least enjoyed some aesthetic benefits of like ostensibly being on the side of the labor force is the reason why you point the finger at blame at the Democratic Party. And yes, a lot of the neoliberal reforms implemented were directly done by the Democratic Party. I just want you to understand, a lot of the neoliberal reforms were directly implemented by the Democratic Party. You can say that they were responding to more reactionary forces in the government or whatever, but like Bill Clinton's influence is not marginal, nor is it negligible in the way that finance capital dominates every fucking sector. And same with Carter as well. Yes, absolutely. I would go so far as to say, like, under Obama and Biden, there has been a bit more shift to the left again from center right, closer to, I guess, closer to center, but still center right in comparison to these prior prior Democratic administrations that were very much like incredibly right wing with their economic policies. That's something to certainly consider. Even something as ridiculous as like the 1992 Heritage Foundation operation, the ACA being implemented is unfortunately considered like a incredibly, I guess, anti-capitalist measure, even though it was never an anti-capitalist measure at all. Forcing insurance providers to literally fucking offer coverage to every single person is inherently anti-capitalist. That came at a major cost. I just don't think that Bill Clinton would ever allow something like that. It's so funny. I was actually reading something I think it was on Twitter about this, that like healthcare was so insane pre-Obamacare, where like healthcare providers could just refuse to insure you if you had a pre-existing condition, that people don't believe it. People literally don't believe that the healthcare industry was that fucking cruel. I saw a tweet that went viral with like tens of thousands of likes of people being like, psh, sure, dude. I love people making up this reality that insurance providers refuse to cover people if they had pre-existing conditions. And I was like, what are you saying? That's a fucking real thing that was happening. Yeah, you want to insure a house after it burned down? Exactly. The arguments, the common points, the common talking points were so fucked up. Thanks, Obama, unironically, yes.
All right. Obviously, I didn't know the sound was going to be that bad. What he says is, I'm not going to worry about it until it happens. He seemed to downplay the idea there. After that comment, Michigan Congresswoman Debbie Dingell reportedly tried to warn the president about the strike. She called the White House. The UAW leader has been privately frustrated that the White House has not been as engaged. Do you think President Biden should have done more earlier? Should he be doing more now?
Well, I think President Biden gave a speech a couple of days ago in which he made the absolutely correct point. Corporate profits for the automakers are soaring, and that they have got to use those profits to benefit their employees. And he has made the point many, many times that a strong labor movement benefits all of us. So I think, the president has made it clear which side he is on in the struggle. But I think Jake, to tell you the truth, that all of us in this country have got to stand with the UAW now. They're not just fighting for decent wages and benefits for automobile workers. They're really standing up to the kind of corporate greed that is impacting tens and tens of millions of Americans. And what they are really saying, they're saying this to the big three, but I think that message has got to go out all over corporate America. You people on top, you've never had it so good. More income and wealth inequality today than ever in the history of America. Richest people are becoming phenomenally richer. But
Right.
60% of American workers are living paycheck to paycheck. So UAW is standing up against corporate greed, and I applaud them for what they're doing.
So, as I mentioned to Vice President Pence, in the 60s, during this time of the huge expansion of the middle class, CEOs made about 20 times more than the average worker. Now it's, as you note, 300 to 400 times more. It's clear that these companies are not going to solve the income inequality out of the goodness of their hearts. It's clear that shareholders aren't necessarily going to be demanding it. They want their stocks to go up. The problem's getting worse. The middle class is getting squeezed and it's shrinking. In addition to a higher minimum wage and higher taxes on the wealthy, I know you support those two as a way to solve the problem. But is there another way, a more holistic way to solve this problem? Because you're right. I mean, polls indicate this is not just progressives aren't the only ones who are concerned about this. This actually is something that Democrats, Republicans, independents, people across party lines, part of the MAGA movement is an opposition to corporations, et cetera, frustrations with this.
That's right.
Do you think there's a holistic solution to this problem?
I do. And I think what we have got to appreciate, and you're absolutely right, Jake, this is not a progressive issue, it's not a conservative issue or a moderate issue. What we have got to do is
kind of revision here is on Tapper. I mean, this is partially due to contradictions becoming more glaringly obvious, but also partially due to the Republican Party reading the room better than the Democratic Party and immediately utilizing economic populism and baking it into their commentary. Because this country rarely ever moves in a direction unless at least now, America now, rarely ever moves in a direction unless the Republican Party goes there first. So part of the reason why the rhetoric has changed a lot surrounding this issue. It is also always incredibly frustrating when these fucking idiots on the right will be like, you mean the communist Jeff Bezos? And it's like, I want to die when I hear that. They hate big corporations, but do not understand why they hate big corporations. And they also simultaneously hate big government. It's just like the American mind is so broken.
is come together as a nation and tell the people on top, they just cannot have it all. What does that mean specifically? We are the only major country on earth, Jake, that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a human right, despite spending almost twice as much as any other country. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Meanwhile, while people can't afford housing, while the price of food in the grocery stores are going up, what you are seeing is corporate profits are soaring. So we need to deal, by the way, with a corrupt political system, and as a result of Citizens United, people in Washington too often represent the rich and the powerful, not the middle class, not the working class. But we need to bring our people together around an agenda that says, you know what, healthcare is right. Let's not pay more for prescription drugs than people around the rest of the world. If our kids want to go to college, they should be able to, regardless of their income. So we have got to bring people together around an agenda that works for all, not just the few.
New numbers out this week show that child poverty in the U.S. more than doubled in the last year, from 5% to 12%. 1 in 8 American children. This comes after Congress let that pandemic-era enhanced child tax credit expire. Do you think it should be put back? And who do you blame for its disappearance? Because that was not just Republican.
No, that's quite right. Look, what we put in that tax credit that substantially lowered childhood poverty in America, we put that into the American Rescue Plan. We try to put it back into so-called Build Back Better plan, which had 0 Republican support and did not have the support of Mr. Manchin and Ms. Sinema. We only had 48 votes to pass it. Jay, take a deep breath. We're talking about the head of General Motors making $29 million a year. We're talking about the rich getting richer, and yet we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. What a disgrace. What a disgrace. So, of course, we have to restore that child tax credit. We have to end this obscenity of how we treat our children. We have to deal with income and wealth inequality. We need health care. For these are not radical ideas. These are ideas that exist in many countries all over the world. But essentially now,
he's lying. There's no other country in the world, unless it's a country that is like directly in a dystopian state as a consequence of American interference, involvement, and implementation of neoliberal, like a neoliberal constitution, or directly planting a fascist dictator there or something like that. There's no country on the planet except for countries that we fucked up. Americans love turning a blind eye to Marshall Plan recipient nations. Those don't exist. Whenever we're talking about like the positive things that a government can do, ask America to point to fucking any European social democracy. They'll be like, what are you talking about? That's not real. This has never happened. They won't even look to fucking Canada to learn anything from that. You are 100% on right, motherfuckers jumping on it. Gotta say, there's nothing more funny than watching right-wingers discover that only a couple of investment firms own everything and think it's bad because of wokeness. These people will look at the problems of capitalism right in the eye and never see capitalism for what it is. I love that the community notes came for them. Also, BlackRock and Vanguard and their existence is to make it seem like the average working class person has a stake in the market. Yeah, the thread itself is a joke. This guy was doing a bit explaining that like, who owns BlackRock? Oh, turns out we own BlackRock, right? I read the thread. It was stupid. Turns out Vanguard isn't owned by any particular reason. It's owned by the people who invest in our funds. No fucking way. This goes deeper than I ever imagined. I remember when I worked at UPS, my target date retirement account through Voya was invested in several different funds. I get the point. And the reality is, well, one, there are larger shareholders at play here that have a significant stake in these companies. But ultimately, no, this is basically making fun of all the fucking dumbass conservative conspiracy theorists, by the way, chat. This guy is making fun of this guy, who is definitely dumber than that guy. This guy, he's always like, if you look at who owns CNBC, who owns Fox, and who owns CNN, it's always this, dude. It's always this. Okay, I can't keep doing this. Okay. Yeah, I mean, to the BlackRock and Vanguard own every company and are the secret puppet masters of the universe crowd. Please Google search the meaning of index funds and then never tweet again. But it doesn't matter. Those funds exist. And the reality is that your interests, this is why I always say capitalism dictates that all the losses are socialized and all the profits are privatized. That's why I always say when the stock market is doing well, that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing well. But when the stock market is doing poorly, well, you're doing poorly too. All of these 401ks have basically created the idea that, like, even if you're a regular old worker, a regular old working class individual, you have a vested interest in the stock market doing well. Other way around? What do you mean? No, when the stock market's doing well, you're not doing well. Your life does not change in a legitimate way. But if the stock market is doing poorly, well, then you're going to be doing poorly too, because those losses are going to be socialized. It is what it is. It makes everybody feel like they have a stake. They have a ownership stake in a company.
Now the people on top, once again, they think they have a right to have it all, and to hell with everybody else. And that's a mentality that has to be changed. And what the UAW is doing is saying, let's all come together. Let's stand up for the working class of this country and the middle class of this country. And now is the time to do that.
We turn now to United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain.
She's like so not used to saying UAW that she fucked it up. I love that.
Good morning to you, sir. You have said that you had reasonably productive conversations with Ford yesterday. Does that mean they're going to put a more generous offer on the table?
Good morning. Thanks for having us. And, that's up to them. The reason we're in this situation right now is because all three of the big three companies chose to wait. They chose not to negotiate for the 8 weeks we had. We started this back in July, and we told them then, don't wait till the last minute or you're going to find yourself in a bad position. And unfortunately, they chose to wait till the last week to get down and start talking, to get serious about this, and that's where we are now. And if we don't get better offers and we don't get down and take care of the members' needs, then we're going to amp this thing up even more.
Well, you said progress is slow. Will you order strikes at additional plants this week? Are you preparing for that?
We're prepared to do whatever we have to do. So the membership is ready. The membership is fed up. We're fed up with falling behind. It's been decades of falling behind, and especially this past decade, in the most wealthiest times in the history of these companies. There is no excuse. These companies have made $250 billion in the last 10 years, $21 billion in the last 6 months alone. And our workers' wages and conditions have went backwards.
You're asking for 36% pay raises, our reporter just laid out there. Stellantis said they've offered 21%. What are you expecting into tomorrow's negotiation with them? That seems forward movement.
We've asked for 40% pay increases, and the reason we asked for 40% pay increases is because in the last 4 years alone, the CEO pay went up 40%. They're already millionaires.
Right.
You know, it's shameful that one of the leaders of one of the corporations sitting in his second home in Acapulco while we're bargaining, rather than being at the bargaining table. And so, our demands are just. We're asking for our fair share in this economy and the fruits of our labor.
So 21% is a no-go for you?
It's definitely a no-go, and we've made that very clear to the companies.
Ford's CEO said
It's like weird that it comes across like she's like antagonistic.
last November that electric vehicles are going to require 40% less labor to produce than combustion.
This is like Pete Buttigieg being like, so how long do you have on the strike funds? Like going on the fucking picket line and being like, so how long do you think you can put out? How much money you guys got in there? How much money in the tank? Care to tell me which factories you're choosing to do your standing strike at next, or what's happening?
Vehicles. I know it may not be the intention, but I wonder how you think this transition to electric vehicles may be eating away at your union strength.
Well, I don't believe it's eating away at our union strength. It is the way it is right now. Unfortunately, this is what's wrong with our economy, and this is what's wrong with America right now. The billionaire class keeps taking more and more, and the working class keeps getting left behind. And the unfortunate part in this transition right now, like always, go back to the Great Recession. The banks got bailed out by our taxpayer dollars, and they just kept on doing what they do, while working class people's homes got foreclosed on.
Automakers got bailed out too.
Go back to the, yes, automakers
And
got bailed out.
taxpayers
And
lost
again,
money on that.
The workers were unfairly blamed for everything that was wrong with those companies. It was bad decisions on the parts of the companies that put us in that position. And the sad reality is, the workers paid the price for that. We made all the sacrifices, and after a decade of massive profits,
Yep.
the workers have went backwards. Our wages have went backwards. Our benefits have went backwards. The majority of our members have zero retirement security now. And meanwhile, it's insulting that a CEO gets on air in the last few days and says that her $29 million salary is justified by her performance. No, it's not. It's justified by the performance of the worker on the backs of the workers and by paying them poverty wages. And that's unacceptable in this country.
Well, I know. You've also said, though, it's a shell game to talk about, CEOs handing back part of their money. You're talking about something that's more fundamental to the structure of this entire sector of the economy. And that's why I'm asking you about the transition, because many of the factories in this country that make batteries for those electric vehicles are not unionized.
Crazy. If only there was a provision that they could have put in the IRA for all the new manufacturing facilities that wasn't shot down by a dude who should literally be in prison, or his daughter should be in prison, and his brother should be in prison. And if you were to ask me why they should go to prison, there's like literally, a multitude of different reasons you can point to, like, artificially increasing the prices of fucking medicine that Joe Manchin's daughter herself personally boosted when she worked at this pharmaceutical corporation, which she sold to West Virginia. I'm just saying, like, there are people that are directly involved that played a role in eviscerating certain union provisions from the IRA, which would have made it literally a condition. If you want to fucking build a facility here, we're going to give you money to do that, but you have to make sure that they're unionized. Also, I've never seen so much fucking disdain. Like, goddamn, this is like positively British, I will say. I don't know. She's just so not even indifferent. She's just like very like inconsiderate. It's cool. Like, I haven't seen this in America in a while. Very openly antagonistic, very hostile, very gross. Cool. I like that. That's great. Now they're getting to that point in American media.
Where the White House is pushing the industry to go more towards those electric vehicles. Isn't that part of this challenge for you, leverage-wise?
What the fuck? Like, oh yeah, you're gonna lose your leverage because electric vehicle battery manufacturing is not fucking unionized. It's like, nah, there's workers there. You should say there's fucking workers there. You know what that means? That means that they're gonna want to see what we're doing. They're gonna see the fucking contract negotiations pan out, and they're gonna want a piece of that too. And they should get a piece of that. And the best way to get a piece of that fucking pie that they themselves are generating, the value that they're creating, is by joining a fucking union, specifically maybe the UAW. You know what I'm saying?
So the challenge is, where we're going to go as a country. Again, I get back to this point. Our tax dollars are financing a massive portion of this transition to EV. We believe in a green economy. We have to have clean water. We have to have clean air. Anyone that doesn't believe global warming is happening isn't paying attention. But this transition has to be a just transition. And a just transition means if our tax dollars are going to finance this transition.
Dude, the Green New Deal is the most comprehensive, positive piece of legislation that is so fucking phenomenally good for the American working class, that has been so insanely and insidiously propagandized against. It boggles my mind, and it makes me fucking insanely frustrated. When I think about it, it's like, it is literally the same principle behind like screaming at the top of your fucking lungs at like the prospect of 15-minute cities. It's like, it literally will help you. You fucking absolute moron, you baboon, you idiot. It's the same with the Green New Deal. It is so frustrating, dude. People keep trying to bait UAW into saying bad shit about EVs, and they're not doing so, even though it'd be easy for them to scapegoat. I'm happy they're never taking the bait. Well, I mean, certain EV manufacturing plants are also getting unionized. So why would they say that? Because ultimately, they're fucking workers too. It's not just Tesla, okay?
Then labor can't be left behind. And as it stands right now, the workers are being left behind. The companies want to talk about being competitive. Yeah. It's not about being competitive. Competitive is a code word for race to the bottom. What they want is they want to pay us poverty wages so they can keep on making billions more in profits, and they can keep enriching the shareholders and the CEOs and the corporate executives, while the workers pay the price for it and get left behind. That's got to stop in this country.
Ford has said that your demands would more than double the labor costs, which are already significantly higher than the labor costs at Tesla, at Toyota, and other foreign-owned automakers.
Okay, dude. Oh my God. Oh my. Do you have stocks? Like, what's happening? This is like having Jim Cramer interview fucking Shawn Fain, dude. What the fuck? Holy moly, she's disgusting, dude. What the fuck?
Who don't use union labor. So how do you make the case that these automakers need to keep investing in more expensive union shops rather than move to these right-to-work states?
First off, labor costs are about 5% of the cost of the vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. Shut the fuck up. Puebla. Why don't they move to Puebla? It is. It's fucking nothing, dude. It's fucking bullshit.
They could double our wages and not raise the price of the vehicles and still make billions in profits. It's a choice. And the fact that they want to compare it to how pitiful Tesla pays.
Is to feed him different talking points. I don't think she's crazy. No, she 100% is antagonistic, I think.
Their workers and other companies pay their workers. That's what this whole argument's about. Workers in this country.
There's a much better way to ask that fucking question to him than directly repeat propaganda from the Ford CEO, dog. Are you kidding me? She's not feeding him like good questions to have a decent conversation. She 100% is trying to fucking own him and failing to do so by bringing up just company propaganda.
Got to decide if they want a better life for themselves instead of scraping to get by paycheck to paycheck while everybody else walks away with the loot. Yeah. And, when we bargain good contracts, going back to the founding of this union, people join the UAW because we set the standard. People join unions because it's a better way of life. And that's what we got to do. We have to bargain a good contract, and then we're going to go organize these places and bring these workers in so they get their fair share of the economy that they get nothing of right now. Most of these workers in those companies are scraping to get by so that greedy CEOs and greedy people like Elon Musk can build more rocket ships and shoot themselves in outer space. And that's unacceptable.
President Biden says
Ooh,
he's
yes, you got the smoke for Elon too. Fuck him up, King. God, I love him. He's
the most
great.
pro-union president in American history, but you haven't endorsed him. What is it going to take for you to do that?
After she bullied him, she's like, now, why don't you shut the fuck up and toe the line for your goddamn president? It's like, nice, man, thanks. How about he show up at the picket line?
Our endorsements are going to be earned. We've been very clear about that, no matter what politician
How
it is.
does he earn it?
We expect action. We expect action, not words. And you know, this fight we're in right now, I mean, obviously, people are talking about them trying to interject themselves into our negotiations. This negotiating, our negotiators are fighting hard. Our leadership's fighting hard. It's going to be one at the negotiating table with our negotiating teams, with our members manning the picket lines and our allies out there. Who the president is now, who the former president was, or the presidents before them, isn't going to win this fight. This fight is all about one thing. It's about workers winning their fair share of economic justice instead of being left behind as they have been in the last decades.
We will be watching closely. Shawn Fain, thank you for your time today.